everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on episode 3 of Land of the Lustrous, and I couldn't wait. Nope, sorry, I could not wait. And plus, I did get a little bit of insight going into this episode, but no, you expected me to wait after episode 2 is over? Because I debated. I think I know at the same time I was wanting to do Arcane in this series at the same time and go like every other week. You know that's probably not going to happen. I'm probably going to watch straight through this series and then maybe put Arcane like on Fridays randomly or something like that when it happens. I don't know. But I was like, oh, I'll watch 2 episodes of Land of the Lustrous and then watch an episode 2 of Arcane and then I'll go back and forth. After that episode, no. I was like, there's no way. So Arcane will come when it comes. That show is kind of dependent on my brother's schedule when he gets off work to come watch it with me because he wants to watch it with me. So I'm kind of like doing that on his request. But this series, we're going to power right through. Because how could you not? So yeah, last episode, we got to meet a few more of the gems, which is fun. A few more of the minerals. We've met Foss, we've met Dia and Bortz. Great times. We also know a couple of the others, the pink-haired one, the silver-haired one. There's the Jade, there's the two-toned one. Is it Boats or whatever? And then Adamant, obviously. There's like 28 of them all together, right? And we know Cinnabar's off doing their thing. But so these mysterious, I posted a picture from episode 1 of the gatherers coming from the moon, the solar, the solar lunarians or whatever. Like the one holding like the basket coming in. And Ace22 in the Discord was like, yes, coming to the party to collect the chili. And I was like, what? So it just, amazing. But so many questions, but they were our dear gemstones were attacked last episode. And then a snail appeared because it's the year of the snail, apparently. And the snail ate Foss and dissolved Foss. So what do we do about that? Well, I refuse to believe that Foss is dead 2 episodes in to this. It's a 12, 13 episode series, so not out of the realm of possibility, but they're the main character, so no. So then the question is, if they didn't die, what's going to happen? I'm like, is the snail going to poop them out? And they're going to be fine? Or is Foss going to fuse with the snail? And are these gemstones going to become all manners of flora and fauna and evolve? Tis the question, because we know the gemstones themselves are these minerals that have been taken over by organisms that basically give them a consciousness. So if those organisms, if the minerals are broken down on a microscopic level, technically all of Foss is inside of the snail. So technically, they told us last episode and in episode 1 that as long as you have every part and piece as long as all the parts and pieces are there, you can reconstruct the body. It didn't say much about when it dissolves. So that's kind of the big question mark. But theoretically, by all accounts, all of Foss is there. So if Foss took over the entire snail, it wouldn't be outside of the realm of possibility because it seems likely or could happen. So I love this series so much already because the world building is it's so funny that I'm watching this in Doro at the same time because Doro is amazing. I love Doro, but it's a very straightforward. There's still lots of questions in Doro that I'm wondering and theorizing. You should go check out that series if you haven't, but that one seems so much more straightforward than this one. It's like that one's concrete and this is abstract as F because I'm like, oh, But what if we, and then the show is just like, maybe you'll find out next episode. And Doro's like twice as long as this. So we only have like 13 episodes to get answers. And I'm like, oh my God. But speaking of answers, real quick before we start, I did have someone, Pancake, I pulled up their comment here. They commented on the Discord because I did say, usually I don't like knowing information about the manga or the anime. I don't like knowing source material information. I just don't like knowing it. I would like to watch the entire series in full and then find out production stuff because that takes away some of the fun of it for me. I know, I'm weird. But I did have a legit question. After the last 2 episodes, I was like, I need to find out about the gender and the pronouns because it's going to drive me crazy if I misgender these minerals. If I've misgendered minerals the entire series, it's going to drive me crazy. So I asked the Discord, okay, legit question. The subtitles say that they're masculine. What do we do with that? And so Pancake responded. And I'm going to read their response verbatim. Okay, so I went to check, and here's what I understand. Others can correct me, though. They are gems and have no gender. I think any pronouns are technically fine. From what I saw, the subtitles use he because they use boku, which is a boyish way to refer to yourself, but not really the same as he or him. And then someone else commented later on saying that some of them use boku, but some of them also use like a feminine version of that. And I was like, well, then what do we do? They also added, the official manga translator talked with the author and use they, them in some few instances, but mostly they just use the gem names. The same thing happens in the dub. So they're pretty much just non-binary. They're just they, them. It's just they, them. They're non-binary. They are gemstones. We don't have to give them genders. I actually prefer them all being non-binary. That feels so much better. There's just something, I always feel like using they, them is such a padding for me if I'm not certain. And if they're, if they are non-binary, then it is they, them. But if I'm not sure, I'm like, I don't want to misgender. And so in this series, they are very androgynous. So calling them they, them and using their names, I am fine with that. And I will try to exercise that the best that I can, even when the subtitles are like saying otherwise. So thank you, Pancake. I'm sure people will have had, by the time I get to this episode, I'm sure people will have had comments for the first 2. So I'll probably revisit this conversation as we get further in. But for now, they, them sounds like a plan. But I'm super enjoying this. I want to know what's going to happen to Foss, though. Foss, my mineral. What are we going to do? What? You gonna become a snail? Oh no! Can Cinnabar be a snail? Can you both be snails together? Would you love me if I was a worm? Would you love me if I was a snail? I don't know. Anyway, I've rambled enough. We need to get started. We are gonna watch episode 3 of Land of the Lustrous. Hope y'all are ready. And we're gonna do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's begin. Well, that ended up being a lot different than I thought it was going to be. I did not think it was going to go that route. If I'm being honest, I had ideas in my head of what would happen, but I didn't even think about the shell. I didn't even think about the fact that the snails absorb the minerals to harden their shells, and so thus Foss becomes part of the shell itself. I didn't even think about that. I thought, okay, well, it's going to go into the bloodstream and it's going to go into the organs and it's going to be part of the tissue and, cartilage and material there. And it's just going to like absorb like if you're like a vitamin or something like that. That's what I thought. But also it makes sense because you have like your nails and it's like that mineral goes towards helping that. I'm not a scientist. I did fine with science in school, but I haven't taken a science class since 2008. So science is not my forte. So this series is going to give me a little bit of a workout because I haven't taken a science course literally since 2008. So it's been a while. But it's never too late to learn something new. It's never too late to go back and relearn things. So being a learner is very important. So Daya was the MVP of this episode. I freaking love Daya. I didn't know how to feel about Diamond last episode because they definitely feel like a character who needs to have time to grow on their own. And Bortz is such a strong character. Like Bortz is very much like I know who I am. This is how it is. Get on my level, bro, or move out of the way. And Bortz has a very defined presence and they're very strong. And I like the contrast they have to Diamond because Diamond seems to be like, Diamond's hard, got a shell, but needs to work on who they are and defining their identity. And it seems like this episode, they kind of came to a consensus, which is really, really great. So we need to talk about that in this episode. But what a wild time. So some things that stood out, of course, Of course, Foss was thinking of Cinnabar the entire time. Now it makes sense. Okay, so Foss being absorbed into the snail, and then you look over and you see them. I thought I don't know what I thought this, like the light coming down from the cracks were. It's the shell, and it's Foss becoming part of it. And getting it. What a fast process. I think part of the disbelief I had and the confusion I had was that dissolving and absorption was like instantaneous. It was like, boom, done. I'm like, what? So that's so wild to me, this giant ass snail absorbing them. But yeah, and of course, Bortz is like, no response. What a brat. And it's like, no. And so Diamond's like, now wait a minute. Let's not kill the snail, shall we? And then that's when Diamond literally saved Foss's life. Noting that there's Foss in the shell from where it was cracked, becoming part of it. They're like, Foss might have found something. So the episode's called Metamorphose. So this idea that now Foss ends up coming out of the shell. They chip away the parts and pieces of Foss and put Foss back together, and they're able to like reforge themselves and everything's fine. And they don't seem to have lost any memories, which is good. But that does beg the question if there's other creatures or materials that could absorb any of the gems and possibly like transfuse them into their being. There's a lot of possibilities with that. But at some point, again, I have questions that this show may never answer, but they need to be asked. There is a comment that they make note that Diamond and Cinnabar are 100 years old. 100 years old? Again, that begs the question of why are we building an encyclopedia now? After 100 years. So I question whether or not the encyclopedia has been there before but was destroyed. It makes it seem like they're immortal and they never change, which is curious. And then what does Adamant know that the others don't know? I feel like there's secret knowledge there or gatekeeping or something. Also, Studio Orange. I realized that it was Studio Orange that did the animation for this episode, for this series, but Diamond's starting to put two and two together that possibly Foss is in the shell itself, which is so cool. But Studio Orange also does Trigun Stampede, which I have reactions to on this channel. If you've not watched them, you should check them out. It's a fun show. I love Trigun so much. I'm looking at the manga right now. The animation style in that series and the movement is so good. Like, especially towards the end of the season, the movement was matching up with this, and there's little subtle, like the way that how fluid it is, the way that the characters move, the speed, the efficiency, nothing feels cheap. It all feels like fluid and so organic, and it's just freaking good. And I was like, oh, you just want to sit there and just drool and watch it. It's just, And then as soon as I saw the scene where Bortz and Dia go down against the snail, I'm like, Studio Orange, you showing off back then, and now you're showing off now. I love it. It's so good. The movement, you're like, you can follow, and it's one of those things where you can follow along and find where the characters are going, but it's just so quick and just smooth. Yes, please. So yeah. And so Dia shows a lot in this episode. Bortz's biggest thing, I feel like in some regards, Bortz holds Diamond back because Bortz is, and it's not necessarily done out of any malice. Bortz likes Dia. Bortz is in love, in my opinion, with Dia, but Bortz is a freaking tsundere, so you can't tell. But because Bortz loves Dia, they don't want them to be in danger, so they're constantly, in some regards, holding Diamond back because they're like, they don't want Diamond to get hurt, so they hold them back. But then in turn, they also kind of put Diamond down at times because they don't want them to get hurt. So they're like, oh, you're not strong enough to handle this. Let me do it. And while that intent is from a place of good, I think Diamond shows in this episode that they are very capable of being their own person and being strong. And in some respects, Bortz needs to come to the conclusion and come to the realization that Diamond can defend themselves and be fine on their own. Because Diamond's the one that figures out the stuff about the shell. Diamond, like, is the one that goes in there to get, and like tries to crack open the shell to get Foss out. And that's when also Diamond is responsible for the snail going into the salt water to begin with, which causes the snail inside to shrink down, and that's when they fish it out of the water. Now, I like that all the other gemstones like peek their heads over the thing, and they're like, oh, is there more Lunarians? I'm like, we just had a big battle last episode, and you're just now waking up and realizing something's up? What? Yeah, so like, oh, well, it's already over with. We didn't even get to see them. And they're like, why didn't the bell go off? So that's a really good question. Why was a signal not sounded? I think, I didn't even know there was a bell system. So apparently there was an alarm. Wasn't sounded. Why not? Why is Adamant still meditating? This all seems kind of suspicious and weird. There are unanswered questions and no one's offering answers. So yeah, oh, it's just a snail then. This would have all been so obvious. But I'm like, why was it so big? Why did it shrink back down? And my thing too is that Diamond tries to give Foss some credit, being like that Foss helped them find the weak point, but everyone there except Cinnabar and Diamond really don't care a lot for Foss, and that's really sad. I felt bad for Foss, especially because it's like, but luckily Foss didn't get to hear them say those things, because at first we think that the snail is Foss, and I thought it was, and I was like, oh no. And so you think that Foss is hearing all these horrible things about them, but the reality is no. Now, apparently Foss can understand the snail now because it's been part of its shell and part of its being. Do we think that the snail is going to tell Foss what they said? Maybe. It also brings up the idea of evolution. If Foss can interact with the snail and hear it now because it's been part of the shell, if the others combine with other creatures or beings, are they going to be able to understand them as well? Right? Are they going to paint with all the colors of the wind? Essentially, every rock and tree and creature has a life, has a spirit, has a name. It's literally, I need an edit of Land of the Lustrous with colors of the wind. We do get a new gem's name. We get Euclase. Euclase. We don't get to see which one is Euclase, but we see Jade in them. Maybe Euclase was the one with the two-toned. Maybe we already knew that. And so it's time to pick up the scraps of that piece of garbage. We'll see. That shell is massive. But they can't find Foss inside. And so instead they have the shell. And Daya's like, but you were able to crack it, so I figured we'd see something of them. And I'm like, where did you go? The thing is, Foss has been there the whole time. I do like the detail of seeing, I guess Euclase is the one with the two-toned hair. That you see that they have parts of them missing from the snail and the acid. Right? But the snail, I'm curious about the snail, because the snail seemed like it wanted to be their friend, or at least interact with them, which is curious. I'm wondering if we're going to get anything out of that, or if they're just going to turn the snail loose next episode and be like, bye, see you on your merry way. So Rutile is interesting in this episode, because Rutile wants to cut open the snail to try to extract. I feel like Rutile is partially joking in all of this, because Rutile would probably... Why Rutile didn't just tell them, if we don't have parts and pieces of the minerals, it's no good. Why they decide to tease everyone with the prospect of cutting the snail open, I don't know, but they have some dark humor, right? And so Rutile's like, well, and then Diamond makes this point where Rutile's like, well, it's just a slimy little thing, let's open it. And Diamond says, animals can't be put back together, can they? They rot when they break. Which, yeah, the idea that they're all immortal and they can put themselves back together as many times as they want to, mammals don't get that luxury. And Jade says, in order to adapt to their environment, the older ones pass in favor of their replacements. That's a way to put it. I never thought of it that way. Just being like, yeah, to adapt, we just, eventually just die out and a cycle repeats. Sure. Mm-hmm. And then Bortz, and apparently the master told them that. So how Adamant knows all of this knowledge, but wants Foss to make an encyclopedia? You tell me. That seems like Adamant is just giving jobs away to Foss and letting Foss take care of it. But what do I know? We'll find out. And of course, Bort's like, what inferior beings. Bortz is so tsundere and such just not like, what inferior being? Like Bortz and Bakugo and Sasuke from Naruto and Bakugo from My Hero Academia would get along so well with Bortz. Like, they'd just be a trio of angsty snark. But I do love Bortz a lot. And Diamond's like, well, what if Foss is turned into this snail? I also like the detail of Bortz's hair not being fixed yet because of the snail and the acid. And poor Diamond. Diamond is so sweet. And Diamond gets their arm back together. And the fact that Foss saved it. And Diamond's like, well, you know, we're responsible for telling Foss to investigate the shell in the first place. And they just leave. Diamond's the only one who really has a lot of faith in Foss and wants Foss to come back. So anyway, Diamond has such a heart, takes the snail away. And then as Diamond's walking with who she thinks is, or who they think is Foss, they say, you turning out like this. And then says, why not start by utterly changing? And Diamond's like, well, this isn't exactly what I meant. So they're like, is this really what you wanted? Interesting. And the thing is, the snail responds to everything that Diamond says like it's Foss. And so that part was interesting because it's like, oh, you were just playing the entire time. And poor Diamond. Diamond is such an empath that they go out of their way to try to figure out and get help from others. So we find these other gemstones. I don't know if this one's ruby or who it is or garnet or whatever. My question in this scene is, why are they making a dress? When would they need said dress? It's very beautiful and I love it. It has all the ruffles and everything. It's beautiful and gorgeous, but why? We don't know why this garnet colored gemstone is making a dress. And they're like, oh, look at that with Foss. And they put a little hair bow, which is absolutely adorable on it. Love that. So then there's this other one. I love this one that just comes up with a giant saw. Where did the saw come from? We don't know. They're just fixing a desk like you do, as if it were no big deal. I do love their pigtails, though. I wanted to see more of them. So yeah, then like, oh, is that Foss, huh? Well, then I do love the genuine disgust of the one silver-haired gemstone that's like, they're like, really? This is Foss? Oh no. And they're like, well, I guess you're not joking. But then they said, well, it's gross, but at least it won't bother anyone. And poor Diamond's like, oh, is this what you think of Foss? And then we see the blue-haired and purple-haired one, and they're like, oh, wow. And they're like, so we need to find a way to undo this, huh? And they're like, well, Foss never did anything before either, so this might not be a bad situation for them to be in. And then we see this one that's like lemon-haired and one that's like orange. It's like a lemon drop and tangerine. And it's like, oh, you're just calling it quits, huh? And they're like, nice going, Foss. Not much has changed. I'm like, that's not even Foss. They're all so mean. I do like this one that has the random, they look like they have the green giant hair and then a random purple blob on their head. I want to know who all these gemstones are. I'm assuming we're going to find out eventually, but yeah, they're just very like nonplussed about all of this, being like, oh, well. I didn't know what to think about like the snail just pooping onto Diamond. It was very weird. And for a hot second, I guess because I've watched Uzumaki recently, for a hot second, I was like, is Foss going to turn into a literal snail? Is this going to be their destiny? And is the snail going to grow or do something crazy? Or are they going to get a new shell? What is this all about? But yeah, poor Diamond. Diamond becomes a bit existential in this moment and wonders about like, you know, you're changing, Foss, and becoming, or at least they think, becoming this new being. Why am I, you know, trying to be anything but what I am? And you could tell that Diamond is kind of jealous in a way and admires Bort in a way and wants to be like them. But that's not who Diamond is. Diamond is not Bort. And I feel for Diamond because I don't want Diamond to be Bort. I like them as their individual. And they say don't compare yourself to anyone. No need to be jealous or put on airs, is there? And they say that as if they're talking about Foss, but Foss has never been a character that's been jealous or put on airs, right? So it's really referring to Diamond and what they think of themselves, which is interesting. They're like, are you happier this way as a changed being? Interesting. I love that it finally becomes night. And that's when Diamond's like, well, we're going to keep on looking. And as that happens, I'm sure there's someone out there who needs you. Speaking of someone out there that needs you, that's when we go to Cinnabar. Right on the head. Nail on the head show. And of course, Cinnabar's out doing their duty, thinking that they're going to have their death wish and meet the Lunarians. But no. I'm glad that when they went to go and attack Diamond, that they stopped before they did any damage. I was a little bit worried about that. So we find out our cubic native mineral diamond, Formula C, has a hardness of 10. So it is the most hard alongside Bortz. I love how they glow, though. Diamond glowing in the grass and it being blinding. I love it. And Cinnabar and Diamond being the same age. I love it so much. I like that Cinnabar kind of isn't as moody around Diamond, maybe because they know them better. And Foss seemed to know Diamond before. Diamond's just great. I love their character. At first, when we first met them, I thought they were going to be a snob. But no, was totally wrong about that. And so, of course, Cinnabar doesn't... I like that the Diamond also puts the glove as like a little bandana around their head. That's really super cute. But yeah, they are convinced that Foss is a snail. And I like that Cinnabar is just kind of like, okay. Cinnabar's like, y'all are freaks. I don't even know how we got to this snail point, but definitely when Diamond was like, this is Foss, the same one that you rescued the other day, it was very much a, would you love me if I was a worm moment? And by the end of the scene, Cinnabar's like, yeah, I guess I would. But Cinnabar's like, I don't even want to know. And so they're like, well, it might be better that Foss is in that. Cinnabar doesn't seem convinced that they could become a snail. Did you break that shell before he was eaten? And so I feel like maybe Cinnabar was kind of on to the fact that Foss was absorbed into the shell too before Diamond figured it out. It seemed like that. And I feel like Cinnabar kind of figures it out, but is like, I'm a tsundere. I'm not going to tell Diamond that I figured it out. And of course, Diamond's like, well, isn't this the part where you tell me this is how we solve the problem? And then Cinnabar's like, well, maybe it's better that Foss is this way so that they're not in danger. Oh, Cinnabar likes Foss. They just don't want to admit it, right? Oh. And Diamond's like, well, I'm going to figure out what the case may be. And it's like, what is that thing? And that's when Cinnabar's like, you do know that shell dwellers eat rocks and repair and strengthen their shells. And just basically explains, like, that's why Foss is in the shell, not with that thing. I don't know why you're carrying it around. But I love that also. And then that's when Cinnabar points out the red shells and the white shells and helps Diamond figure all that out. I love it. Still, the shot of Foss being absorbed in the snail and breaking apart and the eyeballs going everywhere is still so creepy, right? Still so creepy. But yeah, that's when Diamond figures it out. And I love the sequence of Diamond running back. I love it as they're confirming with Cinnabar. And they're like, well, of course, we never die. And then Cinnabar's like, there's no point in saving that one. Leave them alone. And Diamond's like, not listening. Bring them back as much as you want. They'll still be a hopeless disappointment. And then, yeah, then Cinnabar's like, well, they'll be a hopeless disappointment, but I guess I can wait a little longer. And the fact that their little Mercury turns into Foss, like a little version of it, before I start calling you a liar. The fact that Cinnabar is like, I guess I'll stick around a little longer. I guess I'll have faith in you a little bit more. I guess I'll see Foss again if they come back. I'm like, Cinnabar! Just stop it. Admit that you like them. So yeah, Diamond runs back. I love that Diamond goes through all the things of saying, well, you should change yourself. and then says you could try doing things you don't normally do. And Diamond does that exact same on the way back. The movement is so fluid. The animation is so good. I loved everything about this scene where they're running back to the shell. And then they make it to Bortz. Of course Bortz is there, and they're like, we can bring Foss back. And the fact that Bortz has faith in Diamond. I love them as a ship because you can see the love on Bortz's face. Cinnabar's right up there at that level with Bortz. But Bortz like looks over at Diamond. Diamond's like, we can do this. And Diamond has such conviction on their face that Bortz is like, fine, we're going to try this. And I'm like, yes. So the expressions are so good. I love it. And they're like, hurry up. And Diamond's like, yay. So it wakes everybody up. They get the shell back. And how they scraped all the gemstones out of the shell, did all this, met with Cinnabar, had the whole 9 yards done, and Adamant slept through all of it? Are you joking? Come on now. But yeah, Rutile, they put them all back together. And I love the sequence where it shows the body. It's like a Sailor Moon transformation where the body comes back. The booty is still weird. Non-binary or not, the jello flubber booty coming back in is such a weird moment. I'm like, I don't know why they have hot dog Gumby hips and booties. I don't know why. It's a mangaka choice. I question you, mangaka. I question you, hardcore. But what can we do? I do love that it looks like a Listerine commercial. Foss returning looks like a Listerine commercial. It's like, gingivitis, be gone! And then Foss is back. Foss comes back to life. There you go. As long as we can find all the pieces, we're all good to go. So how many are here? 1, 2, 3, 4. There's Jade. There's Euclase. There's Rutile. There's the other 2 from the first episode. So there's 5 there. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and then 13. So there's 13. So there's about half of the gemstones, not counting Adamant and Cinnabar. So these are about half of all of them. Interesting. That are all back here. And Diamond's so precious. I love them. I just love Foss being like, it was you! You ate me! It's great. I freaking love it. Hilarious. I love that everybody's like, oh, Foss is back to normal. Hilarious. I love that Foss. I was a little bit worried when Foss woke up. I was like, is Foss going to wake up and not have their memories, or wake up and not know any of them, or not be themselves? No, they're instantly back in the saddle, back to their normal, back to our regularly scheduled program. I didn't think it was going to happen that way. I didn't think the whole deal with the shell was going to be a thing, but I'm certainly glad that it was. But yeah, Foss can understand the snail now. And Diamond's like, of course you can. And that's it. I'm so fascinated. That's not how I thought it was going to work out, but I also wasn't expecting this to be a Diamond-focused episode, and I'm kind of here for it. I like Diamond and Bortz a lot. I like Cinnabar and Foss a lot. Rutile's pretty cool. And I like Rutile and Jade's dynamic. The others I'm still learning, but I like all of them so far. But yeah. The idea of how minerals are going to work in the real world and that coming into play in this series is going to be interesting. So I'm curious to see what we get from that. But anyway, I'm excited for episode 4. The third episode, usually that third episode, you're like, oh, what are we going to do? No, that third episode, that cements that I'm really into this series, and I can't wait for episode 4. So, yeah. Anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back real soon with more of the Land of the Lustrous. Bye!